Hey, folks, welcome to the Real Estate Leadership and Legacy Podcast. Today, I have a very good friend of mine, Alex Kouramanis. I absolutely love our conversations. We're mixing a little bit of philosophy with a little bit of real estate and a little bit of just life and whys. And I think that it's just a plethora of amazing information. And I hope you guys enjoyed as much as I did having this conversation with him. So please enjoy, click the like button, and subscribe. Hello, listeners and viewers of the Real Estate Leadership and Legacy Podcast. It's Alex Powell here, and I am graced with the presence of a very good friend of mine, Alex Kouramanis. Alex, thank you so much for joining me.
It's my absolute pleasure. Love the pals. I'm a pal of the pals.
Honestly, I'm super excited about this one because we were just talking about it too. Like, literally, there's an infinite amount of things to talk about, and every time you and I chat, we'll get on the phone for like a 3-minute conversation. Next thing you know, 45 minutes will have gone by, and it's like, holy smokes, I gotta go. But
yeah, right.
We'll catch this on the next one. Yeah, but I wanted to give the audience like a quick synopsis, and then we're gonna go. I'd like you to talk a little bit about your journey and how we got started, and then we'll get into all kinds of fun stuff. To break it down, Alex has been investing in real estate since 2012 and became full-time in real estate in 2018. And he specializes in wholesaling, flipping, and multifamily buy and hold strategies. Alex also provides real estate investment, negotiation, and personal finance education videos on the online platforms of Udemy and Skillshare. And I have not attested to this yet, but he says that he cooks the best steak in the world. So putting that on your resume, and I'm looking forward to testing it out.
I'm happy to take it. I'm happy to prove myself. Every chance is an opportunity to shine, you know?
Yeah. So if you could tell us, like, what got you started into real estate? Like your educational background's unique and it's like completely different, right? So Tell us maybe what you studied and what got you into real estate.
I think the summary of what I want to say is I'm hope for basically anybody who's interested taking their life into a new direction through some sort of asset vehicle, whether it be real estate or any other asset class they're comfortable with. I'm basically just a guy who wasn't the best student in grade school. I didn't really see the point. A lot of time they're just sitting us down for hours. You want to move around, you want to do something fun and whatever, and they're just hammering you. It's like, what's the point of all this information? I'm not getting it. Pretty much you're locked into that education until you get to the point where you can explore post-secondary options for yourself. And I took everything that was hard in high school because I've got 2 engineer brothers and they're 15 years older than me. So it's, quite a shadow or quite big shoes to fill. And so I took all the hard stuff and I found that, man, if I really make myself suffer, I can do it, but like, I don't want to do this. And then I go into philosophy and cognitive science because, well, first I started for film, because everybody loves movies, right? And I can sort of act, and I've made movies and whatever. But I just found that the passion for me wasn't really there. I could see all these people that like smelled bad and like knew all the references, and I was just like, that's not my tribe, with all due respect. Not everybody's like that. I'm just kidding around. But anyways, after that, I'm like, well, what is it that's important to me? And it just seemed that there was a lot of stuff about myself, about people, about the world that I didn't know that I wanted to get clearer on. So that's how I get on this track of philosophy, which is a mistake because the promise is that you get more answers, but you only ever end up with more questions. So it's like, But the questions are, I think, a habit or a discipline in thinking in a way that hopes to sort of catch your emotions and your biases and then challenge them and then pin them up against some other options and see what comes out on top. So that is actually how I got into real estate, because at the end of philosophy, I was like, well, it doesn't seem like there's objective truth, or if there is, there's no way of talking about it. So what's the good of knowledge? And it seems the good of knowledge is whatever produces results for you. So utilitarian somewhat, or pragmatic. And then it's like, if I'm going to spend my time learning and doing things, where do I get the most leverage? Where do I get the highest return? So naturally I kind of start, I see this thing about Rich Dad Poor Dad. I explore that, and lo and behold, I end up with real estate as the vehicle that makes the most sense for me. Again, because, leverage, tax benefits, and most importantly, too, you are dealing with people which kind of tend to be the gregarious, ebullient type, but I'm also very quiet and private. So it's like my skill set, I think, is being able to identify and connect with people and figure things out. And that's where I think the most money is made in real estate, because everything, it's money, people, deals, as Stefan Arnio's book is, right? That's where it all is. So dealing with sellers, dealing with, let's say, team members, whether it's brokers or contractors or whatever. And then, finding other people that have maybe money locked up in RSPs that they don't realize they can funnel into real estate opportunities and get greater returns, these kinds of things. So it seemed, I started off as a bartender, never really had like a career, just didn't see the point. Again, I have a tough time being told what to do. And I don't know. I remember like you were an engineer, right? And it's just like, and you're a realtor now as well as an investor. And it's just like, man, I'm envious of the focus and the discipline to just lock in and be the best in that career, because like I need something a bit more free. I can't.
That was I just want to clarify, that was a lot of holding my knees and like rocking back and forth and crying. I just want to clarify that the amount of focus was actually like I found God, maybe, I think, at some point. So yeah, it was but honestly, one thing I absolutely love, you're, especially on like Facebook, you often position or you articulate yourself very well. First of all, I love reading what you write, and you often write these questions that induce incite a lot of like people to come and comment and engage with your posts that are awesome. And whether or not they agree or disagree, I think that's the beauty of philosophy in itself, is that sometimes I know from like a practical standpoint, like something like engineering is like, I can produce a product and it gets a result, which is value.
Clear.
Something like philosophy is harder to make that distinction, and it's harder to create that channeling between what I'm thinking or producing to what creates value, unless you become like a well-known philosopher or a professor or something like that. So I find that the integration between real estate investing and your geopolitical standpoint and your just politics in general and all these things coupled with investing is fascinating. And I love your kind of take on it. So if you guys are interested, check out Alex Kouramanis' stuff, because it's and engage with it, of course.
I thank you. That's very, very kind. And talk about grace, man. I'm in a position where I just don't really care. I can take a lot of risks of what I'm saying just to jar people into thinking, whether it's like to say I'm wrong or to say, maybe there's something to this or whatever it is. And I just like, Socrates referred to himself as the gadfly, and gadflies are annoying, of course. So I'm something like this. But I've found pretty much even like last fall, like I had some pretty interesting experiences that happened that I never had before. And it's made me shift my focus away to think I should do less of this kind of probing and irritation and more be just sort of positive, light, and then, offer questions. Because in the end, you can't really do anything we're all emotional and embodied beings. And there's like this tired misogynistic trope that like some guys will be like, oh, women are so emotional. It's like, yeah, this is coming from a guy who would literally kill someone for cutting him off in traffic, or like burn a city hall because his team lost a sport, right?
Yeah.
But we're all emotional, right? And this is the way we are. So what was I even saying with that? Now I'm going off on tangents again. Oh, but I guess just being more emotional. Yeah, the only way to be, let's say, a leader, to have this leadership or this legacy, is to find the like-minded people at an emotional level. There's no need to be putting things down in a logical form or say this makes sense, this doesn't, or whatever. You just lead by example, and whoever wants to get on a train comes with you. And I think that's what you're supposed to spread. So I've kind of moved away a little bit, but every once in a while I'll throw in something exciting. But yeah, definitely, like, whether it's philosophy, geopolitics, I think it's all connected. And I think the important thing that I'm trying to do, I guess the intuition is, we can get so locked into habits. Like I was thinking even just the habit of how I used to think like, man, I got to make, money for all my time invested, right? It's like, if I put in a certain number of hours, I got to get X out. And that's really not the way to think, because you don't.
Honestly, that was a huge wake up for me. I used to work on a punch clock. It was paid for 15 minutes kind of thing. So
that's the thing. It's a drug, isn't it? You're just like, I got to get return immediately on this time invested. And the bigger question is, well, what for? You'll never have difficulty, putting together some cash, trading your hours here and there, but you're never going to break that barrier. It's almost like trying to break gravity. You can fly in a plane, nice, but how do you soar through the clouds? Like, you got to jettison, and you're not going to do that with that little engine with a little bit of gas. You need rocket fuel. So
that's a good point. How do you recommend to somebody who's looking to get started in real estate and maybe has to maintain a job to obviously bring income in, while at the same time break through that barrier to get to the next level. Because I agree with you. You have to take risks and you have to decouple yourself from the golden handcuffs
Yeah,
effectively,
the
which
goal.
is your 9 to 5. But it's like, what Fat Bastard says in Austin Powers is like, I'm unhappy because I eat, and I eat because I'm unhappy. It's this like
A
constant
vicious
cycle of
cycle.
like, I'm unhappy because I'm working and I'm
Yeah,
tethered to this, but
that's
I'm
right.
tethered to this, by being tethered to this, I'm unhappy. How do you recommend someone do that? Because I think you and I both started when like in our young years, right? So we
Mhm.
had the ability to take on more risk without having the repercussions of like
Yeah.
families or whatever obligations.
There's a lot to unpack there. I guess just to be super boring, the answer is actually not very sexy. We all know what the answer is. And there's two real points to it. One is, what is your why? Right? Is the
Mm-hmm.
why big enough? Then you'll figure it out anyhow. And the other is work harder. And it's kind of funny because I see a lot of stuff on social media, like making fun of self-help, personal development, the grinder mentality. And it's like, it's not, they're getting confused. So in philosophy or in logic, there's necessary and sufficient conditions. Working hard is not sufficient to make you a success, but it is necessary.
Yep.
So it's like, if you poo-poo working hard or you poo-poo self-help, it's like, what do you got? Waiting around for government to do it? Because like, yeah. All right. So anyways, I'm going to get to that tangent now, but to answer your question, what I mean is there needs to be a reason why you're going to get, if you forgive the French, kicked in the nuts every goddamn morning.
Yeah.
Because that's what entrepreneurship is. And I don't mean to seem gloomy, and maybe you can tell me if you feel this way, but as an entrepreneur, it's so counterintuitive, especially to what you hear a lot in today's media. But as an entrepreneur, you are a giver. Everybody gets paid before you do. And at the
Yep.
end of everything, after a certain amount of time, after the risk and the cost and whatever, if there's anything left over, you get it. And some of that actually goes to government again. So,
Oh
which
yeah.
by the way, government's like, hey, I heard you lost money on that flip. That's too bad. Oh, you made money? You owe us some. It's a
Mm-hmm.
one-way street, right? So
Yeah.
everybody basically is against you in some way, and you have to find the way to show everybody that there's a way that we can all win if we're cooperative, right? And it's hard to do that
Mm-hmm.
because, again, like we talk golden handcuffs, everybody's thinking me first, and I'm certainly guilty of that. Anytime a project goes a little bit weird or wrong, I was thinking about myself, not my team, because
Yep.
it's you get under stress, you have deadlines and whatever, you move away from the team. But yeah, this reason why to get up and to face that constant battle against basically everybody, money is just not enough to do that. You're going to quit and want to retreat to the handcuffs because it's just easier to have a job where you check in, check out, and don't really think much, or don't have the same uncertainty or risk or whatever. The why has to be big because it'll give you courage. Like if you have a crappy day and your child comes up to you and gives you a hug, talk about rocket fuel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Oh
a
yeah.
why. And you can speak to
What's
that.
your why? For sure,
Honestly,
and I'm happy to share my why too, because
yeah,
this is a
well,
very important topic to me. I love that you touched on
100%.
it. It's great.
My why is very boring. I'm your traditional story arc, knight in shining armor slaying dragons to rescue my princess. My why is my wife, my dogs, our future family, and my current family. I'm just in
Yeah,
service to everybody. It's kind of like the Terminator. Like I was made to come here to save you and to protect you and to make sure that you flourish. And
I love that.
thank you. And it's also, of course,
Yeah,
like for me, a bit of lifestyle because all I really want is just for everybody to get off my back. Like I don't want anybody chasing me for money and stuff. Just leave me alone. Like, ugh. So that's my like.
yeah.
But that's the thing. I mean, that's not really that exciting. But it's exciting to help my wife be happy and see her smile, or my dogs be happy, or maybe kids or whatever. So that's my
Mm-hmm.
why. But your why. Let's get into that.
Yeah. So mine, the one word that has always resonated with me is always been legacy. My
Mm.
grandfather, my opa, he created what I deem to be one of the most marvelous legacies. He fled the war during
Yeah.
the Hungarian Revolution and went to Germany, through Austria into Germany, and then eventually married my grandmother, had two kids, came to Canada. Then the Iron Curtain fell in
Mm-hmm.
Hungary, and he moved back to Hungary, started a company where he employed like half of this little town that we lived in. And he actually eventually got
Oh,
what's called the Lovogrend in Hungarian. He effectively got knighted by the Hungarian government for bringing so much
whoa.
prosperity back to Hungary.
That's
And
bad.
like just then retired, lived here. We had such a
Yep.
close relationship, all of us. He was the quintessential patriarch of our family, and just man, like I used to when I was first starting out like in entrepreneurship. I remember we'd sit. He lived in the condo out in North York. I'd go out there and we'd sit in his hot tub, and I'd just be like batting stuff back and forth. And he's been through it all. I mean, starting a company in post
Yeah.
communist Hungary is
Yeah.
no walk in the park.
Absolutely
But
not.
but it was look at the legacy that created, and I think about him, my grandmother, and my mom and uncle. And now you look at the table, and he's since passed, unfortunately. But you look at the dinner table now, and there is like five grandkids now. I don't know how many, five great grandkids. Spouses for all the kids. It's like it's just enveloped, blossomed
Yeah.
into this
Yeah.
crazy. Like eventually, in like two more generations, we're gonna need to rent a hall,
Yeah.
and that's and it's and if you think about legacy, it's like holy shit, this guy
Yeah.
literally like he took it on and crushed
Hmm.
it and made a better life for us. And like that's when I think about it too. And you being like Uncle Alex when you come visit, the boys just freaking love you. So, but
They're amazing
like,
kids, man.
I see those kids now. I'm like, I need to. Like my duty is to do the same, if not better. That's
Right.
that
Right.
he
Right.
gave me this opportunity. I need to take this opportunity and give it and improve on it even a little bit, and
Yeah.
then so my kids can do the same. And that's how I see it.
So what I heard there, I mean, there's so much there that's amazing. I love that story because what you have there is an orientation not only towards something good, but towards, I guess, expansion or creation, right? Because this is what it is to be a human being. I mean, the reason why your kids light you up and why, the idea of your grandfather having this legacy of all these grandkids now, like that's what lit him up. And it's this thing that we as human beings have hope that the future will be better than the past. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why we bother having kids at all, and then imparting what we learn and giving them a chance that we didn't have, and so on and so forth. It's about that kind of expansion. And that's just such a human, beautiful orientation because I think so many of us are lost. I mean, certainly in my family dynamic wasn't, I mean, everybody's got, their family issues, but it was a bit more fragmented. And I was kind of on my own a lot. So I had to find my own a way to orient, and I've definitely made a lot of
Mm-hmm.
mistakes along the way and continue to make mistakes today. But hopefully, but the orientation for me, I think, I don't know. This is going to sound corny or whatever, but I've been thinking because I'm not terribly religious, but just as the idea of a character, the idea of like Jesus is this person who regards everybody as a brother or a sister, and he goes through the worst thing imaginable because of love. And I go through a lot of pain because of love. Like I skateboard, not to compare that to Jesus, but like I skateboard, it hurts
Yeah.
every time. Like my shin is all battered and bloody right now. It was a little Shiba Inu. She likes to fight me every day for dominance. She'll like bite me, but like I do it because I love her. I'll put up with a bit of pain, and that's what it is to be a parent. You like a
Mm-hmm.
mother, certainly unbelievable pain, but I think this
Oh
is the
yeah.
orientation is this like service constantly and taking in the pain for love to make things better. I think it's just a beautiful story. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate it. And so when you're let's really back to real estate now. So
Yes.
within this whole idea of legacy and you protecting and wanting to provide for your for family, where do you see things happening right now? Like let's talk first maybe what you're focused on right now,
Sure.
if you want to talk about some of the projects you're doing, and
Mm-hmm.
then what's your outlook. Like I mean, we're in Ontario, you're in the same kind of market as I am, but
Yep.
what are you seeing?
Okay. So what I'm focused on, I was a much more active wholesaler a year plus ago. Kind of been doing a little stuff here and there, but not really so much. I kind of transitioned a bit into flips, but the way the market's turned now, I'm looking more at wholesaling again. And in the meantime, I'm always looking to park capital into multifamily investments because I believe in having a life of stability and peace, and cash flow will give you that. If you buy right with the right terms, the right numbers, etc., put in the right value, and then get it out, that's stable. Flipping and wholesaling is a bit more chaotic, but it's for to get to that stability. So in terms of where the market is right now. So right now, so I just assigned a Kingston deal last Friday, and that went nice. And I have a flip right now that I'm in the process of selling. We had an offer last night that wasn't very attractive, and I think that kind of gets me to where we're at, like in the market right now. So pretty much as of about May, things have been sort of on a steady trickle downwards. You'll get little pops, but the overall trend is down. And when you look at history, so in the 90s, there was a bit of a opportunity to buy, like in Toronto, everybody knows. There was also, of course, 2008, which didn't really hit Canada as hard as it did America. I think it was worse in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Wasn't there like better buying opportunities in 2012 contrasted to 2008? I don't know.
Potentially. I think that's when things started to pick back up.
That's when they started getting up. Yeah, because people were buying more. Yeah. So that was kind of the end of it, right?
So I bought my first place, I think, in 2012.
Yeah.
Was
mine 2012 or 2013? Something like that. 2012, 2013. But what tends to happen in those markets is you see first this precipitous drop in interest rates, and then the crash or whatever, the opportunities follow that. So it's interesting to point that out, because it's somewhat counterintuitive. You'd think if people are rational, when interest rates go down, that's when you buy, because it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. It makes sense. But that's not the way people behave. People behave somewhat, I mean, the cliche is like sheep, let's say, because sheep follow. So people don't do their own thinking. They do what everyone else is doing. So when interest rates drop a little bit, people go, oh, well, how much is it going to drop? So it's just like, so people will do the opposite. They will. So we saw with COVID, to me, when COVID cracked off, I posted immediately like, hey, there's a buying opportunity right now, get in. And it wasn't, but I
same thing.
2 or 4 months, and then things went fucking bonkers, right? So then we had the correction interest rate 2 years after that. So what you saw was when prices were shooting up, everybody was buying like crazy, right? And then the interest rate doubled, and then that capped that. But now we're on the point where, so if interest rate doubled and you think it dropped, it should pick up interest again, because people have been, let's say, like trying to buy but couldn't, and now, but that doesn't, just like when people bought at the peak, people will let the opportunities now go. So this is an opportunity for investors. And this is just as Warren Buffett says, when people are greedy, be fearful. When people are fearful, be greedy. So right now I see it as an opportunity, but there's built-in risk, because again, the overall trend seems to be a little bit downward, and we're getting indications because of inflation, somewhat what's going on in America and the stocks and whatever. We're seeing this idea, like Bank of Canada, it seems like they're going to, again, drop the interest rate, and maybe even more than quarter basis point. So
it's fascinating, because it doesn't matter what your risk is. Like high inflation is higher interest, is to combat that.
Exactly.
And then when inflation starts to come down, they need to, of course, bring interest rates down.
Yeah.
But it's a byproduct of people, like companies, needing to like lay off. So now you have the risk of like non-payment of rent issues or delinquencies. It's like every flip of the coin has some sort of a risk factor to it. And it's interesting too now, like I was actually thinking to myself yesterday, I was looking at, because this whole Japanese yen situation, we're recording this in August. So this is 2 days ago, where the market just did a 5% drop, and it was, everyone's freaking out, wondering if this is the start of a recession. And today I look, and they're like, looks like it's coming back and it's going to be okay. And then I'm watching these trend videos on YouTube, and it's like, if you zoom out, it's like, it looks like it's. So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I wish there was just a way to know and a way to have more certainty. But then it wouldn't be investing. It would be, it would just be like certainty, I guess. Yeah. So fundamentally, like, because aside, like Kaylee and I are very heavily divested in real estate. I'd say 95% of our assets are in real estate. So part of our plan over this last kind of cycle has been to take a component of that and invest it into ETFs or something that's going to be long-term. And so, but you're like, do I buy it now, or should I buy it tomorrow, or next week, or next month, or after the election? Or, like, these are all these questions of like where to go, how to do it. And it's interesting, but right now it's with real estate in itself, it's, I'm hearing mixed reports. I'm hearing like, a lot of immigration is still or sorry, I see a lot of people leaving Ontario. Like
Yeah.
inter-provincial migration is a big
Mm-hmm.
issue.
Yep.
And then I know a lot of people personally who have come here to Canada and are like, screw this, man. Like
Yeah.
my cost of living is twice as
Yep.
much. Like my quality of life stinks, and the rules and regulations and just the overall mentality here is wacko compared to where I'm from. So we had a guy who used to work for us. He was a Russian, and he's like, "What the hell's going on here?" He's like, "I'd rather go to Russia and live there." So his visa expired, and he nice guy, and you always have a place with us. But I get it. You know, he's barely making ends meet here on what he could afford to do. So it's interesting. Two sides to every coin.
Definitely what you're saying there is something that I've experienced as well. Like anecdotally, talking to a lot of immigrants mostly, they'll say, you know, I came here 10, 20 years ago. There was opportunities then, even like 10 years ago. And there's just nothing now. And I'm working. I just keep paying more and getting taxed more. I mean, Olivia Chow wants to tax you for rain. Really, after you locked everything down and then everybody, you know, like either couldn't work and lost their savings or, you know, did their own work on their house and got dead and now they can't sell it because this, you know. So, I agree. That seems anecdotally, it seems to be the case. There's a lot of people talking like, hey, this is communist Canada. I mean, I had better odds in home country, wherever it may be, let's say Germany or even Russia or whatever. And because most of all, because the quality of life is there. I think a lot of people right now are super divided, especially when you have like major cities. If you have like a New York or a Toronto, you don't know people on a face-to-face basis, really. It's not like a small town community. So there's no real investment in the people around you. And when you have constant either propaganda or misinformation, disinformation, whatever, being funneled to you daily on something you're addicted to, right? Like various forms of social media, even just a picture. People don't realize, this is where my cognitive science comes in, how sensitive we are to context, like the way lighting is, the smell in the air, the particular mood you had that morning, the timing at which you drank coffee. There's so much that impinges onto your cognition that you don't even know. And the joke to me is always when people say other people are brainwashed or whatever. I mean, the people who think they're impervious to brainwashing are most susceptible to it. And I think everybody's just in this mode now, being hammered with like, oh, Trump's the worst, Kamala's the worst, or liberals, or So it's just like, you know what? I don't trust anybody, and I'm working like a dog, and I'm paying too much. To hell with this. I agree.
Yeah, I actually one of the best descriptions I've heard of, actually from, I know, a mutual fan of ours, Jordan Peterson. He explained what the difference was between the left and the right. You hear a lot of this nowadays. You're a left or you're a right wing or whatever it is. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter what you are. I find that there's, for like values, a lot of the times there's similarities across the board.
Yes.
And then there's these small nuances that people are just like polar opposites on, and then that divides them. It's like, today we're all good people. Like, who cares, right? Yeah. But what he explained it in a very interesting way, and what he said that the left, both sides fear gigantism. The left fears gigantism in the government, and the right, I think I might have that backwards. Sorry, the left fears gigantism in corporations, and the right fears gigantism in the government. And when he said it, I was like, good Lord, that is 100% true. Because I think that as small business owners and as entrepreneurs, and as you said, like, we pay everybody first, including the government, before we get anything. And for myself, as like, I obviously lean towards like less government intervention, less regulation, because at the end of the day, I'm ethical, what I believe to be ethical. Like, I do things right. I pay people on time. I don't cheat people, you know, like that kind of thing. And it's like, give me a break, man. Like, another thing, another rain tax, you know, like, it's
I know, man. So this is the thing, like, as far as Ontario is concerned, obviously very difficult to, like, you know, you can always do like a flip here and there, but very difficult to make buy and hold numbers work unless you get a tired old mom and pop situation with a ton of equity and they can give you favorable terms on a vendor take back. Like, let's say,
or you're willing to put 50% down because you got deep pockets for some reason.
Exactly, that's the thing, right? So that's opportunity cost right there, and you get more leverage putting less down. You get higher percentage returns and more opportunities. Blah blah blah. So as far as evaluating Ontario, I mean, here's the thing. I believe that just as with the political thing, you're right. First of all, with politics, I view it now more as a sphere rather than like a grid spectrum, you're over here. There's overlap, and they swing around and swirl around depending on context. And it's really quite astonishing to see, because there's certain ways people view themselves somehow special or better or more realistic or whatever than the other political party, and they're just as emotional and delusional and whatever is the party they claim to be the crazy one. We just don't see it because that suits our intuitions or preferences or whatever. But there's other ways of viewing it, and that's why coming together and having dialogue, respectful dialogue, is super important, which we don't really have. This is the feature, by the way, of democracy that makes it work. Democracy doesn't work if we're divided and then we just play a mob game. Like, we have to, okay, so here's why Kamala Harris would be the best or the worst or whatever, because, maybe she says these things, but actually here's the track record, this will happen or whatever. And we have a dialogue there. That's the way to do it when we come together. But we just are speaking different languages. And I bring up the point of language games a lot from Wittgenstein. But
the House of Babel.
And the House of Babel. That's precisely, that's another great one to get into. The House of Babel is this like story of what happens when people decide to be God, and then they're going to like build their own pathway to heaven. And then God says, yeah, now you can't communicate. So, if you're religiously inclined, it's a super interesting story. If you're an atheist, it's a super, super dumb story. But I think the takeaway is it's this failure to communicate and one tribe saying they're above others that always leads to catastrophe. And we need to realize our limitations and be humble, and that we're brothers and sisters and we can come together and do it. But we can if we constantly fight each other. But anyways, Ontario. So in terms of investing being a personal thing, everybody, I think, has their own comfort level, their own preference. They have certain needs. Like for example, maybe, Bill Gates or Trump or whoever, they will feel like failures if they don't make billions. I'm okay with like a couple million, that's great. Wonderful. Right. Like that would do it. But it's like, no, they're a failure. So for me, that's my comfort level. For them, that's their comfort level. And the risk tolerance, like the stuff that Trump has done in the past, whether you like him or not, unbelievably ballsy. Like I would never, like, he transformed New York. So insane. And again, I'm not trying to like gush or anything. Like, take it or leave him, but you have to admit, ballsy. And I couldn't do that. He's just a guy made of different stuff. And like, that's what he's comfortable with. So for me, Ontario, what I like about it, again, is pretty decent rate of immigration. Basically, real estate, I think, rises and falls on jobs and people. If people are not immigrating, and if they are immigrating, are not able to pay more or not getting raises, and the economy is not diverse enough, it eventually dies. So Hamilton is an example of, like, once upon a time, more into steel. And we saw what happened when everybody was interested in steel, and then all of a sudden that went away. Same thing with like Detroit. Hamilton is not as, like, didn't get wiped out like the way Detroit did, but just an example. And then, like, because I know that I'm actually curious to hear thoughts about like Alberta, but like Calgary, for example, is less diverse than compared to, like, let's say like Toronto, because there's more of an oil focus there, more of the trades focus. And when that's, going well, then okay. But we saw that people traded in keys for cash or just sent in keys in the mail and walked away from their properties. That can happen when, the population is dwindling and the income isn't there. So I like Ontario because of the options, and also because you can get wholesale deals anywhere. If you have a world-class province in a city like, let's say, Toronto, or even like Peterborough is super crazy right now. A ton of, like, let's say, Indian immigrant students over there, and there's always been students that flock there, which is better. And if I can actually get into this real quick, because I've got properties in Barrie and in Peterborough. In Barrie, the price to rent ratio is actually I guess higher price to rent. So there's greater rent for the cost in Peterborough, and you have added security in Peterborough, because most of my tenants are going to be either students or young professionals, but they have parents who have money. Because they got the two colleges there, so Fleming and Trent. So they go there because it's, I guess, more affordable, or there's schools or somewhat jobs and whatever, but they have the backing of the parents, and there's a tighter inventory of quality rentals. So the rent rates are slightly higher. I think for a 1-bedroom basement in Barrie, you're looking somewhere around like $1,500 plus utilities, let's just say, on average. Like, it has to be decent. But you can get like probably 16 or so, for 16 plus, depending on the size, for a basement in Peterborough. And Peterborough prices definitely climbed up. I think they're still slightly below Barrie. But the ratios are a little bit more attractive in Peterborough, and you also have the certain security of the students with the parents coming in as guarantors. So, but tell me about so Calgary. I just shit talked Calgary. Save it.
No, so it's so we actually bought and closed now on our. We have a 10 unit in Edmonton,
Congrats.
and
Wow. Awesome.
honestly, I go there and it's a beacon of hope. I will put that right on. I will put that on
Okay.
recording.
Okay, I know
It is
you're
a
going.
beacon of hope.
Yeah,
You go out west, and it's just well. So here's you brought up a couple good points. So Hamilton used to be Steel Town, right? And then all of a sudden, U.S. Steel buys out Stelco, and then
Mhm.
they shut down Stelco, or they shut down U.S. Steel because Obama wants to buy local steel only or whatever. The whole city goes into shit, and
Thanks.
then Hamilton is forced to diversify, and it took a while. And there's a lot of pensions suffered, a lot of people who were in retirement were suffering, but the whole city kind of reinvented itself. Now we have some of the best hospitals and healthcare facilities in all of Canada are in Hamilton.
Is that right?
We have some of the, oh yeah. You go down Ottawa Street, or you go down Locke Street. It's all bougie with their Starbuckses and all that crap. But
a lot of commercial investment. That is a good sign. Mm-hmm.
Alberta has traditionally been boom bust, so it's always up down, and they recognize it. Actually, there was a really good interview with Danielle Smith, who once again, I find to be a beacon of hope. She just, when she speaks, I'm like, I agree with everything you say, and you're very articulate and kind. And people are like, she is a demon. I'm like, I don't get it, but she sounds like, and she does things that I find are very practical and make a lot of sense. So Alberta, being this boom bust, have been very reliant on oil, as we know. And so when oil went to like negative dollars per barrel and they couldn't sell oil, you're right. People were just coming, mailing in their keys and saying, I'm out of here. And so you have a lot of these legacy owners who own these big apartment buildings in Edmonton or wherever, who were trying to incentivize tenants by like giving 3 months of free rent.
That's
just
right.
stay for the other 9 months, like stay here, we'll lower your rents. And these guys have gone through the trenches in terms of trying to keep these properties stable and holding the line. And now they've seen this glimmer of hope that property values out in the West have started to come up, so they're letting go. So, for example, the property we bought it for 1.2, so 120 a door.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And the previous owner bought it for 128 a door in 2016.
Oh, wow.
So it's just to put it in perspective, it's like, and I can't build that for 1.2 million.
No,
there's not a hope in hell
especially
I can buy that.
Yeah.
So what right now, the reason why I say it's a beacon of hope is because, similar to the story of Hamilton, Alberta is doing a lot of really good things to re-diversify themselves and to give themselves a new identity. For example, they want to make Calgary like the Silicon Valley of the West. That's one of their missions, is to bring a lot of tech companies in, right?
That's smart.
Because they're close to the border too, and Calgary's a very successful big city. Now, also, aside from oil, there's a lot of other chemical plants, and there's a lot of other incentives for companies to start moving their businesses, similar to how, like, when Elon Musk is like, screw it, I'm going to Texas, take his SpaceX with me kind of thing. I find that Alberta's kind of doing that here in Canada. They're the ones that are like, come to us. We've got less taxes, less bullshit, and less whatever. You can come here and just kind of be what you need to be to make money and prosper. So when you couple all of this, they've been already doing this, and they're on an upward trajectory with the current political climate in place. So whether you're liberal or conservative, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, with the liberal government, they've obviously given Alberta a bit of a run for their money, halting the oil production, go energy efficient, all this kind of all this policy surrounding that. So now they've already reinvented themselves, and now assuming, now we don't know what the election is going to bring up in a year and a couple months or whatever, but assuming if the Conservatives get in, they're going to be like, drill, let's get the natural resources going. Let's be a world supplier of energy. What do we think that's going to do to Alberta? Well, they are going to just explode. So that's what I mean for right now. From a real estate standpoint, I see a lot of opportunity already, like net migration for last year. Every province was negative except for Alberta, which was like positive way far compared.
That's super interesting. I wanted to get into that because the thing that we saw, a lot changed because of COVID, one of the things that changed was the culture of work, because a lot of people have remote work now because they realized, well, most of my work is done on a computer anyways. If you're, let's say, a software engineer, I mean, they still have to go in, but there's certain occupations where you can, like, even people who work for the government don't have to be in government buildings now. Like, I have people I rent to in Peterborough that do that. Like, their job is actually in Ottawa or somewhere else, but they don't need to be there. So they work remote. So I don't know why they're in Peterborough. They probably should be in Edmonton. But that's something that's going on, is that, so this is back to Don Campbell's rule in real estate investing in Canada, which is the ripple effect. So we saw, for example, once Toronto was going all bonkers, 2012, whatever, and previously, that trickled into Hamilton and these secondary and tertiary markets even. So that's that ripple outward, like dropping a stone in the middle. That's where Toronto is, and then the ripple outward. So values increase because people spread out because they can't afford, and they're it's only a 20-minute drive. Well, it's only a 40-minute drive. Well, it's only an hour. I usually drive an hour. So it goes out, and I think the ripple effect is in a new paradigm now of this remote working, where it's like, hey, I'm a sucker busting my hump because the property, the sizes of property in at least Calgary, I'm not sure about Edmonton, but I assume it's the same. They have a lot larger homes because, again, they're also, when they were building them, trying to incentivize workers to come over there, work the rigs and so on. And they wanted a home to raise a family in, right? Something long term. So you have these bigger homes, cheaper value. People that work remotely figure, hey, why am I busting my hump to get taxed for rain and pay condo fees? Might as well spend half and go to Edmonton and work on my computer. And it's also beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So I'm actually curious to see how that whole work from home dynamic is going to progress. There's two ends of the coin there. Is like, one is like, oh, it's only going to get easier and better. Versus I know a lot of companies nowadays that are like, no, we're forcing people back into the office because productivity is.
What's your take on that? Because I know Elon Musk made a weird argument about that. He said it would be like immoral if some people have to go work and for you to stay home. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, I don't really get that. But the culture certainly is an obvious one. But what else?
Yeah, I think that it's you'll never be as productive at home as you are at work. I think that there's the argument that, you can work longer hours or whatever, but for that 8-hour period, I truly believe that when you're in a work environment and you can turn your chair over and you can talk to your colleague and you can problem solve easier, faster, better, you get over these barriers and hurdles faster, I think. Now, that being said, I'm not opposed to like hybrid type models, for example. Like, if we have people that come in certain times during the week or whatever, but typically for me personally, when we have staff and people that work for us, it's an in-office position. I come to the office, and I feel like this is where we get a lot of our collaboration and stuff done. This is where we learn about each other and how we operate and our strengths, I saw this I don't know if it was like an Instagram clip or whatever, but there's been reports of people getting there's one guy I think got 11 different jobs. And he puts in like an hour a day on each job, and he's just got like 11 monitors.
Life hack.
And the guy's he's making like, I don't know, like $75K per job or something like that. And he's spending an hour on each job. And to me, it's like, it's freaking wild. So
I mean, I wonder to what degree. First of all, the question of how long that's going to last is open, and then whether or not he's actually able to perform. So the one myth I'm sure you know about is multitasking. So there's this myth that, well, if I, have these different things open, I can do multiple things at once. And that's not really how your brain works. You can't do multiple things at once. You can do multiple things at once terribly, but you can't. Focusing on one task. There's a saying in sales, a confused mind says no, right? And there's also this other saying, actually there's a Japanese saying, something like, damn, I'm not going to remember this one. If there's two hares and you try to get both of them, you get neither.
Oh, so if you try to catch two rabbits, you'll catch none. Or if you chase two rabbits, you'll catch none.
Neither. Or a bird in the hand and so on. So it's very highly energy draining and demanding to try and split focus and do the same quality of work evenly. Really all that does, I think, is just foster a sort of artificial ADD where it's like you break your attention. And the thing is that there's something to that, because do you know the tomato clock? What's it called? The tomato timer? What's it called? There's an Italian guy. Forget his name. Anyway, basically the concept is most people cannot focus for they can't hold sustained focus for more than like a few seconds and a maximum of like, let's say 20 minutes. And the data on this is very clear. This isn't really like debatable. And I know, like when I went to university, for example, we had like 3-hour lectures. It's like, holy God, I could sustain focus, but it's like, you can't just, you get, it's energy. So you need a break. Yeah. You can't just sprint for 3 hours. You need to slow down and then pick it up again. So this tomato timer idea, I can't remember the name, Italian dude. The idea is you set this timer and you do 20 minutes of work and then you stop. Then you take a 2 or 5 minute break. You stand up, do jumping jacks or stretch or whatever, and look outside the window, something like that. And then you get back and you do another 20 minutes. Turns out people are highly productive under those conditions. It seems stupid. It seems counterintuitive. Like, no, I just want to sit there and focus for an hour. After 20 minutes, you're not focusing. You're losing 40 minutes. You're just beating yourself up. Like, be kind to yourself. Give yourself a break.
That's huge.
20 minutes of hardcore work. Take 5 minutes. Don't really go on Instagram because you can scroll. I mean, you could, I guess, but if you put a timer on that too. But that's really the way to get more leverage on yourself because you're treating the body the way it needs to be treated. Again, you can't even professional athletes don't train 8 hours a day every day. They take time off. Their body needs to heal. It's been ripped apart. It needs to put back together again. So just that seems to be the way it goes. So this whole idea of like focusing at home, it is true. There's plenty of distractions, particularly if you have kids and pets, because they just see you're there and they want to come see you. Or if your spouse is around, like I'll just knock on my wife's door because I want something from her room, and we chat for a few minutes, and that's a break or focus, right? But it does seem that if you take 20-minute sprints and then take a break for 5 minutes, that's the best way to go. And I think the work culture doesn't really allow for that.
I also think, though, that you're pretty self-disciplined. I mean, you're an entrepreneur, so you have to be productive, or else if you're not, you fast forward 3 months and you put a big X on the calendar kind of thing. It's like, they make money today. So
yeah. Well, that's also happened. And but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and I think that's an important thing too. And then I remember working a corporate job, and if you showed up, because, there was a company social the night before and you were just like this the whole day because you didn't want to stare at the lights too much. Make
eye contact with people, you embarrass yourself.
Yeah, totally. You'd still kind of make it through, no problem. But here, if I do that and I have to make a sale that day or whatever, if I don't show up and try and give it my all, it's like, oof, I'm cooked. But anyway,
that's true.
I'm not as definitive as maybe I was earlier on when I was like, I don't know if I've seen it work. A lot of my family works from home, and they're like, they work arguably more than if they were in the office working like a 9 to 5 because there's more pressure on them to do stuff, and so there's that component. But
it's that discipline, though, I think, because if you're highly distractible or highly energetic, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it makes sense to have an office and go work there. Like, if you're just going to be distracted, it's better to lock yourself away. And for a lot of people that works too. I mean, you really just have to experiment, I guess. But I think there's different ways it can go. So it's kind of hard to see. You kind of have to see what works for you and track your results.
Yeah, man.
Well, listen, God, we're at 50 minutes.
I told you this would happen. When you and I chat together, time flies. But we're actually already over time. But
are we?
I think what the solution to this is that we're going to have you back in a few months for another round.
I would love to. It would be my great honor because you're a superstar and spending time with you, man. If I can end this on this and just plug you for a second, not in that way. I've been in the industry for some time now, and there's a lot of people who talk a big game, like especially in real estate. And we chatted about this. Some investors that we knew went under because they bought at the peak, got this expensive financing, it turned on them, and they didn't run their numbers that way. They didn't do the 007 rule where you multiply 0.007 by your liability amount, and if it cash flows, then you're good. They didn't bother with that because they're like, it'll be fine because, whatever. They got a little overconfident and they confused that confidence with like certainty, and they, got buried, unfortunately. But there's a lot of people, they talk a lot of crap. There's a lot of insincerity, but being around you is always just, I feel lighter, better. You're the kind of person I want to be around. And there's a lot of people out there that will
waste your time. Man.
You're a high value dude, man. So it's always great to be around you, learn from you, and to get charged up. Pleasure.
Well, honestly, you are, I couldn't have said it better myself. We feel the exact same way. I know Kaylee and I are a huge fan of both you and Emma, and we cherish your friendship and keep crushing it because I know you do.
Thanks, man. You as well.